everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Should your story be a musical? This is a question that I've been mulling over for the last couple of weeks, more than a couple of weeks to be honest, and I thought it would be a nice, fairly straightforward video in which to kind of explore what musicals are and where their strengths are, where their challenges are when you're telling a story. So that's what this video is going to be today. You have no choice. I think this question has a long and a short answer, to be honest. So to get it out the way, if you're someone who's literally like, I have an idea for a story, I think I want to make it a musical, should I do it? Here's the short answer, yes, your story can be a musical. Go forth and write it. Let us know how it goes. We'll come and support you. So yeah, if that's all you needed, if you needed validation, go forth with validation, go do your thing. If you're wanting a bit more of an in-depth discussion of whether your story should be a musical, whether that's because you are literally writing a story and you're considering how to go about portraying that story to an audience, or you're just interested in my thoughts about the pros and cons of musical theatre as a storytelling medium, or you just want to hear my thoughts on it because you're just down for the crack, then keep on watching. Grab a snack, grab a beverage, let's get into this together. Two things before we start. Firstly, if you're watching this video and you're like, well, who are you to tell anyone what should and shouldn't be a musical? Hi, my name's Michaela. I'm an actor, a singer and a writer. I've been a professional performer for 10 years now. Before I trained in musical theatre, I also did a music degree, so I'm also quite knowledgeable about the music side of musical theatre in terms of just music in general. So yeah, I kind of know a little bit about musical theatre. So if you needed that, there is your appeal to authority. Take that and go off. Second thing before we start is show of the week. Because we're talking about different modes of storytelling, I decided to go with a musical that has been told in a variety of different ways, and that is The Great Gatsby. Originally a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's a novel and it's also been adapted into a film and a musical, so I will leave the cast recording down below for you to check out. Right, shall we get started about talking about musicals? And I think we need to start with defining what a musical actually is. One thing that I want to clarify before we begin is that musicals and musical theatre is not a genre. Musical theatre is a medium, and those are very different things that we're going to get into real quick before we get into our main topic. A medium is just a form in which the artist conveys their message, and in this instance the message is the story that you're telling, right? A story, we'll just say, for the purposes of this video, is a bunch of characters, bunch of plot points, put them together in a sequence of events with a beginning, a middle and an end. That's a story. And you can use any storytelling medium in order to convey that story. So you can tell that story as a musical, as a play, as a film, as a TV series, a novel, a narrative poem, a graphic novel or a comic book, a narrative ballet, an online web series. All of these things I've just listed are mediums that you can use to convey your story. And they're gonna have a different effect on your audience because they're different mediums, but the story, the characters, the sequence of events, etc., is going to be the same with all of them. Genre, on the other hand, is kind of, for want of a better word, it's like the vibe of the story. So examples of genres would be like romantic comedy, action, melodrama, tragedy, mystery. Those sci-fi and fantasy. Well, sci-fi and fantasy. Let's not conflate those because they are different, even though they always get lumped together. But all of those are examples of genres. If you find that a bit confusing, I've thought of an analogy for you. And the analogy that I thought of was different homes, different places that a person can live. So in this analogy, the type of dwelling is the medium. So a dwelling could be a bungalow, it could be a mansion, it could be a detached house, it could be a flat, it could be a terrace house. etc. It could be a cottage. So those are all like mediums in this analogy. The genre is like the aesthetic of the dwelling, so the architecture or the interior design aesthetic. So that could be Gothic, that could be minimalist, that could be modern, that could be cottagecore, you know, or like those different things. It could be rustic. Any of the dwellings could have any of the kind of aesthetic vibes. Aesthetics. Wow, Michaela, you're so good with words. So for example, you could have a Gothic bungalow if you had the resources to make it happen. Is that a common thing? No, but if you want to do it, you could do it. So yeah, hopefully that analogy helps you see the distinction between mediums and genres, how they are different. They're different things, even though they can feel very similar. The thing about different mediums is that they will have their strengths when it comes to using them to tell a story, and they will have their challenges in using them to tell a story. So going back to the house analogy, if we're looking at the bungalow as our house medium, a bungalow is great if you as a person don't want to do stairs, or you can't do stairs because you have limited mobility or you use a wheelchair. A bungalow is going to be great for you. It's not going to be great if you have a massive family and you need loads of rooms because you just have one floor to work with. Then it would be better to have at least a 2-story home or more than that, right? So it's not that a bungalow is better or worse, it's just it has different functions and it works better for different needs. Mediums are the same, and this is where it can be useful to ask the question, should my story be a musical? So let's get into some of the strengths and weaknesses that musicals as a medium specifically have. I'm not going to go into an exhaustive list of all of the strengths and weaknesses that musicals as a medium have, partly because there's a lot of overlap with other stage-based mediums like plays, and secondly, I don't want to make this too long. So I'm going to narrow in on the main strengths and weaknesses that pertain to the main defining feature of musicals. And that feature is that they use song as a method of storytelling. If a musical doesn't have songs, it's not a musical. I think everyone can agree. I think everyone can agree that a musical without songs isn't a musical. That is just a play with some music and some dancing thrown in, right? So we're going to focus on the use of song and the strengths and weaknesses that brings. I'm actually going to bring my laptop over so I can properly read my notes, because this is getting a bit dense. It's like really dense. What's a really dense cake? I guess is flan a dense cake? I don't know. It's some kind of really dense cake. Like you could throw it at someone and it might give you a mild concussion. I don't know where that came from. Moving on. For the strengths that musicals have, I thought of 2 main ones. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, so this is kind of my subjective view on what the 2 main strengths are. But hopefully I can persuade you with my excellent rhetoric and not rambling at all, because we know I like to do that. The first strength, in my opinion, is that music is incredibly effective at both conveying emotion to an audience and instilling emotion in an audience. Even if we're not looking at musicals, stage plays, films, TV shows, all of them use music in some capacity. Just thinking off the top of my head, because a lot of people are reminiscing about Lord of the Rings on the interwebs because of the clownish times we're living in, I don't think Lord of the Rings would have had the same emotional effect without that score. I don't think there's a lot of people who would disagree with me on that point. That's not to say that the writing and the characters aren't, you know, just as important, but the music plays a huge part in the emotions that those films bring up in us as an audience and convey to us as an audience. And with musical theatre, the music is baked into the medium. You already are going to be using song, so you have to do less to utilize the power of music in your storytelling, because it's all there, it's in the medium already. And because it's built into the medium, you can really get really detailed in how you use music. So for example, what genre of music do you use within your musical? Are you going to use folky music? Are you going to use pop music? Are you going to make it a jukebox musical? Are you going to use a rock style of music? Are you going to go for a classical musical theatre style of music? Are you going to decide on a genre of music that is specific to the time and place that your story is set in? Are you going to deliberately choose music that's anachronistic because that genre of music conveys like a vibe and a feeling that your audience would better be able to connect with? Another thing that you can explore is the use of different scales. This is getting kind of basic music theory 101, but in the Western classical tradition, major happy, minor is sad, right? But also using different scales from different musical traditions. Maybe you use a scale from a musical tradition from another part of the world if your characters are in that part of the world, or they have a connection to that part of the world. Or you see this a lot with the use of modal scales. Different modal scales give really specific vibes when used. So I think it's either the Mixolydian or the Lydian mode. Editing me put which one. But one of those two modes, you hear it and it's like automatically whimsical, magical vibes. Like, hands down, that is what that scale conveys. So you can use that. You know, the blues scale, if it's set in the jazz era, I could go on. You also have the use of motifs. So, you know, your main character has a song that has a specific melodic motif. You can then take that motif and you can put it into other moments where, you know, it's thematically relevant. You know, your main character's I Want song has a certain motif in it, and so you use that motif in the climax when the character is about to get what they want, and then you modulate it into a minor key when, you know, it all falls apart, when you have the kind of lowest ebb before you have the final climax. You know, all of that stuff to enhance the drama. And you can also use music and orchestration to either further emphasize what is over in the text, or to add subtle layers that are subversive, not subversive, to add extra layers of subtext underneath the overt text of the lyric of your songs. So just making up an example, if you have a character who is very stoic and pragmatic and matter of fact and not really emotional, they could be singing a song to another character and the lyric is very much in that vein of like, nah, this is what we're doing, very kind of straight to the point, pragmatic, stoic. And the orchestration of the music, the counter melodies that you have in the accompaniment can convey the true emotions that that character is feeling but not able to convey in their words. You know, the choice of instrumentation, which is an orchestration thing. Like I said, the different counter melodies, where the voice sits within the accompaniment. All of these are active choices that you can make to further add depth and breadth and detail to your storytelling, right? That was my music nerd coming out. I hope you didn't mind me indulging in that for a second, because I very rarely get to talk in that kind of way. So yeah, I got really into that, sorry. The other major strength that I think musicals have is that the use of song, specifically solo song, is really great at conveying a character's inner thoughts, their motivations, their inner world to an audience in a very direct way. And again, this is something that's kind of baked into the medium, because direct address through song is something that is a very well established convention within musical theatre. If a character is alone on stage and they start singing, unless someone doesn't like musicals, see my video on why you hate musicals, but that aside, like, people aren't going to be like, why is this person suddenly singing, if they know that they've gone to see a musical? Do you know what I mean? Whereas, just using play as the counter example, but this can be applied to anything. In a play, if you're going to decide, right, I'm gonna have the character directly addressing the audience and expositing their inner thoughts and feelings. I'm not saying that it's a really complicated thing or that you can never do it, but you need to create the internal logic of the play in which to do that so that the audience can come with you because they know the rules of the world you're creating, if that makes sense. I think a clear example of this would be in a musical. It wouldn't be completely off base if you have a character start their solo with someone else on stage and they're singing to that character, then mid-song that character leaves and then the character singing just turns to face the audience and is just like, my feelings. Obviously with a better lyric than that, but like you get the idea, like that wouldn't be completely weird. Whereas if you had a play and a character is talking to the other character in monologue and that character just leaves and so the person is just on their own talking to themselves and they turn to the audience and continue talking to themselves, people would think that is odd. You would have to find a way within the workings of your play and the world you're creating for that to not be odd, because if I saw that on stage, I'd be like, what's going on here? You know? And also, if you're doing that, you're really getting into the world of like a more stylized, conceptual kind of piece. And again, this is not wrong, it's not bad, it's not like you can't do that, but you don't have to worry about that in a musical. If you want your characters to just talk to the audience for 3 odd minutes, you can just get them to sing about it. You can get them to sing their feelings and no one's gonna really question it. So those are my 2 strengths. Let's get on to challenges. When it comes to challenges with musicals, specifically talking about song, there's only one that I personally think is worthy of mentioning, because I think a lot of the challenges that people would think of right off the bat when thinking about making a story a musical as opposed to anything else are more to do with our preconceptions of what a musical is and what kind of story suits that idea, which is more of a genre thing. I think, and this is where I think the conflation between musicals being a medium rather than a genre comes in, because I think when most people think of musicals, they think of something light, fluffy, maybe in the more comic realm of things. And so there are certain topics that can come up in stories that if you were to be like, let's make this a musical, people would be like, that's in poor taste. But it's nothing to do with kind of the kind of structurally musical theatre as a form, as a medium. So when it comes to the challenges in that regard, there's only really one specifically to do with the fact that musicals have song. And that is that, just to put it bluntly, telling a story through song is less efficient than telling a story through scenes or through straight text. Yeah. That's I think the main challenge you have if you're deciding to write a musical. And in my opinion, there are 2 main reasons why song is less efficient than straight duologue, dialogue, monologue. The first is you have the restriction of the actual form of song, right? Songs have a form, they have a structure. So just using a typical kind of Western pop song structure, you're going to have first you're going to have introduction, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, potentially a middle 8, chorus, maybe a repeat of the chorus, outro. That is a typical pop song structure. Now obviously musicals don't have to use a pop song structure, they can use different musical song structures, but typically you're going to have something like that. You're going to have some kind of chorus or refrain. You're going to have some kind of verse or kind of recitative type thing to lead into the chorus. You're going to need to have an introduction. You can kind of cut down how much time that takes up by having dialogue over your introduction. But like you need to start the thing, you need to end the thing, you need to set it up, right? The other restriction you have, in my opinion, is songs have lyrics. So you're restricted by the poetry of the lyric. With this, you're mainly looking at the main 2 things. There's probably more, but the 2 things that I thought of kind of off the bat is rhyme. Most songs rhyme. and scansion. So if you don't know what scansion is, which if you haven't done any formal learning in songwriting, you probably don't. Scansion is how the lyric fits the tune or the melody. It's matching up the rhythm of the lyric with the rhythm of the melody so that it sounds natural. So for example, you don't want a unstressed syllable of a word occurring on like a important moment in a melody. A good integration of lyric and melody, the most important words of the lyric would be in the most dramatic or the most noteworthy parts of the melody. So that's what scansion is. If you want a deep dive into scansion and like lyric and songwriting and like how that all comes together, let me know. I can dig out my old songwriting seminar textbooks and see if I can make one for you. But yeah, so those are the two restrictions. So both of these things are going to extend the amount of time it takes for you to convey information to your audience. You know, you need to have, say, a verse and a chorus, so you need to fill that with text. The text has to have like this however many lines in the verse, this however many lines in the chorus, and we need to contrive this rhyme scheme. And so we're going to maybe put things in the text that if it was just straight dialogue, we wouldn't do. So it fills those lines, it honors the rhyme scheme, we honor the structure of the song that we're writing. And yes, you can play with this structure. You can write songs that don't rhyme. You can write songs that don't have that conventional verse, chorus. You can choose to not repeat choruses. But there's also the fact that if people are seeing a musical, they expect songs. So like for efficiency, let's say the most dramatic kind of extreme scenario is you could be like, okay, we just want all of our lyrics just to be efficient as possible, as if it were text. So you end up with a 30-second song. That's not going to be satisfying for your audience. And this kind of goes back to something I've mentioned before about the idea of the first job of a piece of theatre is to entertain. In a similar vein, like your audience is not going to be satisfied by a 30-second song. So even if that would be more efficient, it's your audience is going to be wanting something. You need to make sure that if you're going to have songs, they're long enough that, you know, the audience feel satisfied. There's also the fact that like just in our brains, like you're transitioning from speech into song and then back out into speech. So it's kind of those transitions, we need enough time to transition and then fully feel like we're in this new medium within a medium and then transition out of it. So yeah, you kind of, yes, you could have really efficient songs that are very, very short, but then you're just damaging the effectiveness of your medium if you do that. Yeah, so those are just a couple of really big reasons why telling story through song is less efficient. Let's get on to a case study to illustrate this. Also, obviously, I started filming this as the sun was setting, so the light is changing. Just ignore it, it's fine. I'm such a good YouTuber. So the case study I want to use to demonstrate both the strengths and weaknesses is Wait for It from Hamilton. If you don't know Hamilton, which, how do you not know Hamilton? It's so good, go see it. For those of you who haven't seen Hamilton, where have you been? But Wait for It is Burr's solo in Act 1, where he basically just tells the audience about his life, essentially. Just for context, because obviously we're going to be talking about efficiency, Wait for It is 3 minutes and 14 seconds. So for 3 minutes, 14 seconds, we have Burr singing at us about everything that's going on with him. The way this song demonstrates the strengths. Burr is a character who isn't close to anyone else in the play. He's not a close part of the revolutionary set. He keeps his cards close to his chest. He doesn't really open up to anyone. Right before this song, Burr and Hamilton are talking about the fact that Burr is having an affair with the wife of a British officer, and Hamilton kind of offers an olive branch of being like, dude, if you love this woman, like, go get her. Like, why are you stopping? Like, why are you holding back? And Burr like puts a brick wall up and is just like, I'll see you on the other side of the wall. Burr is a very closed off guy. And so this song comes at the perfect time when as an audience, we've seen enough of Burr. We know he's like a big player in the Revolutionary War. Sorry, I've got an itchy nose. We know he's a big player. We can see he's got relationships with all these other characters, and we can see how he's trying to get in, but it doesn't seem to be working for him. And we want to know what makes this man tick. Like, what is going on with this guy? He's not close to anyone. He's, you know, he's not rude. He's not like completely standoffish, but there's a barrier here. Sorry, let me just put my laptop on silent. Don't need things beeping at me while I'm filming. We've seen that there's a barrier there between Burr and everyone else. And our curiosity has been piqued enough for us to then be like, let's see behind the curtain. And because he's not very close to anyone, he doesn't open up to anyone, direct address is the perfect way to do that. And because it's a musical, we can easily just put in direct address without needing to make it like a thing, because in musicals it's already a thing. Let's get on to where the challenge plays in. And I want to stress that I do not think that what I'm about to say makes this song a bad song. This is one of my favourite songs in the show. In fact, my two favourite songs in this show are Burr songs. So this is not a commentary on how the song is bad. This is just literally for the purposes of demonstrating the trade-offs when writing a musical, what the trade-off is, and how objectively the information that's conveyed in this song is done less efficiently than if this was done in just normal dialogue or monologue. Let's start off with what is actually said in this song that is needed for the plot. If Aaron Burr was just chatting, he'd probably say something like, there's so much loss and chaos in my life. The only thing that I can control is me. So I'm going to move when I'm ready. I'm not going to rush. I'm going to make my moves when I decide to, because I can control when I move, when I strike. And Hamilton has so much in his way. He has so much that he has to contend with, and he doesn't wait. He just keeps on going and going, and he keeps on succeeding. He keeps on getting through. He keeps on getting better and better and better. And I just don't get it. So I'm going to wait and figure out how he does this, because I don't understand how he can do this. And scene. Not that I was acting at all, but yeah, was that about 30 seconds? Editing me, like, let us know how long that was. It wasn't 3 minutes and 14 seconds though. And then in terms of the plot and getting inside Burr's head, that is the stuff that we need to know. So let's go on to what is superfluous. And the two things that, if you know the song, you know I missed out in that little summary, are Theodosia and Burr's dead parents. Again, minor spoilers, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you why right now. Let's start with Theodosia because A, she is the first part of the song. And secondly, she is the less superfluous of the two things because she does kind of get a mention later on in the show. So yeah, Theodosia doesn't come up again as a character. We never see Theodosia. The only other mention she gets is later on in Act 1 when Burr and Hamilton are singing songs to their newborn babies. Theodosia has had her daughter Theodosia with Burr, and Burr is talking to infant Theodosia. And Eliza and Hamilton have had their baby Philip, and so Hamilton is singing to Philip. And that's a nice moment because the whole point of the musical is that you've got Hamilton and you've got Burr, and they're on these two parallel but different trajectories, and then their paths cross in one final explosive event. But in terms of Theodosia as a person and his relationship with Theodosia, that's never mentioned again. And other ways that you could, if you were like, no, we have to get an idea of Burr's relationship with Theodosia, you could show Burr writing or reading letters to Theodosia or from Theodosia. You could show Burr with Theodosia. You could have Theodosia there at the wedding in the scene just before this song. You could show Burr leaving Theodosia and then her husband coming home. But also, ultimately, she never turns up again, you could just cut her. We don't need the information provided by the lyric about his relationship with Theodosia in terms of the plot. Secondly is the parents. In this song, it's the only time Burr's parents are mentioned. I think they might be mentioned right at the beginning, actually. Maybe he mentions his father. Oh yeah, it was my parents' dying wish before they passed. So they're mentioned in one lyric right at the beginning of the play. It's like the second song, you know, 1776, New York City, pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir? It's a lyric in there, and then in this song, and then I don't think they're mentioned at anywhere else. The fact that I don't remember them being mentioned anywhere else shows how little impact they have on the plot, by the way. So if I'm wrong, yes, I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm not, but it's also a testament to the fact that I've seen this musical twice, and I've listened to the cast recording countless times, and I think those are the only two mentions. After this point, they're not mentioned again. So again, if you are like, this is important information for the audience, you can show Burr visiting his parents' graves. You can have Burr and Hamilton have a duologue conversation about dead parents, because obviously Hamilton has a dead mum. Those are just two ways that you can show rather than tell about it. And again, it doesn't impact the plot in any way. They could be cut. So let's talk about the actual efficiency of these superfluous, in my opinion, moments. Like I said, the song is 3 minutes and 14, which is like typical song length. It's not a Jason Robert Brown last 5 years situation where we've got songs that are 8 minutes long. That's a very normal length of time for a song to be. The section about Theodosia is a verse and a chorus. The section about the parents is a verse and a chorus. That's 40 seconds per section. 40 seconds is 20% of the song's time, which means Theodosia and the parents are taking up 40% of the song, which is almost half of the song is conveying information that doesn't impact the plot and could be cut for the sake of the plot. It's not that they have absolutely no purpose. The whole point of the song is we're seeing into the mind of Burr, and these sections help us understand him. It's not completely superfluous in terms of this song and the way the musical is. And again, as I said, I'm not saying this is a bad song. Like this is a killer song. I freaking love it. But if we're looking purely at plot and plot efficiency, you're spending half of a song talking about stuff that doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things, right? That's the trade-off. That's what you have to juggle. So I hope that's a helpful case study. Let's move on now to the final part of this video, is actually how do you decide whether you're gonna write a musical or not. So if you are writing a story and you're still like, you know, I don't have a gut feeling, how do I know whether to make this a play or a musical or something else? Here's how you can decide. Again, this is just my personal opinion. And my personal opinion, based on rapidly gained experience, is the best practical way is just to try it and see. If you're really kind of like, it could go either way, I don't know, or you're a more practical minded person, like you like just getting started, that's kind of your writing or creative process, just try it and see. Find a point in your story that could work either as a piece of monologue or a piece of dialogue, or as a song, and write both and see what happens. And it might be, and this can happen in the writing process sometimes, it might be that you write the song or start writing the song and you're like, oh no, this does not feel right, this is not right, and then you know it's not a musical. Or you might write the song and you're like, yeah, this actually feels okay, and then, you know, the dialogue or monologue is like, well, this is fine because it's dialogue and monologue, it's fine, but like the song is good as well. And then just find another point that could be a song and then write the song for that moment, and then, you know, and take it from there and just kind of feel it out. That's a really useful way. And when I say write the song, obviously if you can't write music, that's fine. You can just write the lyric. So yeah, if you're not a musician, try writing it in poem in verse. Most songs are in ballad form, so dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. It's why when you see those kind of semi-viral posts make the rounds of like, oh, you can sing this poem to this song. It's usually Emily Dickinson, like taking an Emily Dickinson poem and then singing it to a popular pop song. That's because they're both written in ballad form. So you can just do that. And if it feels weird writing out a moment in ballad form poetry, then maybe that's an indication that you just want to keep it as dialogue and monologue and keep it more naturalistic, and then that's fine. Congratulations, you know whether it's going to be a play or a musical. If you either have tried that and are like, both are cool, now what do I do? Or you're the kind of person where you're like, I kind of want to have an idea of what my starting point is. Like, I want to know whether I'm starting to write a musical or not, even if I then change my mind later. Or you just want to hear my thoughts. My thoughts are, here are 4 questions that you can ask yourself. The first question I would ask myself if I were contemplating writing a musical, potentially with a story I had in mind, is, does the story itself lend itself to being a musical? And the example I thought of for this was K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, full disclosure, I have not seen K-pop Demon Hunters, but I know that the basic plot is it's a K-pop girl group who also fight demons, and some of the demons they are fighting are a K-pop boy group. Even with that basic kind of premise of a plot, it completely makes sense that K-pop Demon Hunters is an animated musical with the genre of music being K-pop. Like, that just completely makes sense. No one would hear that as a pitch and be like, really? Why are you making that a musical? That's an odd choice. That's a bit off the wall. I don't know how we're going to market that. The story itself lends itself to having the music integrated, which lends itself to musical theatre, or just an animated musical in this case, because it's, I mean, someone's going to make it a musical at some point. My God. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some Broadway producers being like, let's get our grubby mitts on K-pop Demon Hunters. Let's get that on Broadway. It's probably in workshops as we speak. Anyway. Wow. God, I'm really ruining my odds of having a successful theatre career. Anyway, the second question I would ask myself is there a genre of music that I feel fits with the story that I'm telling and the way I want to tell it? So, for example, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, it's set, or it begins in 1918 in Cornwall, and the music is very kind of contemporary English folk style in terms of the actual style of music, the orchestration, the types of instruments that are used, etc. Another example that I thought of when kind of compiling my notes for this video is We Will Rock You. So obviously that's a jukebox musical based on the music of Queen, but the plot itself is about, you know, these kids in a dystopian future rising up and rebelling against the system. And rock music for a long time has been associated with rebellion, not following the status quo, things like the Satanic Panic, you know, moral recklessness, things like that. So yes, it's contrived because it's a jukebox musical, so in a way there's a bit of contrivance there, but the plot that they came up with to use the songs of Queen in fit with the fact that they've chosen the songs of Queen, if that makes sense. The third question I would ask is, does my story have either a lot of plot points and or plot points that are very dense and complex? And this is kind of going to the challenge of efficiency as a musical. If you have loads and loads of plot points and you want to put them into a musical, you know, the songs take up more time than text would. And so are you going to have enough time to have these songs and also hit all of these plot beats? Similarly, if you have a lot of plot points that are dense and complex, you need time to adequately convey those plot points to your audience, which you kind of have to do through text if you're looking at stage. Film and TV is slightly different because it's more of a visual medium. Like, you can get the camera to zoom in on visual stuff. Like, if your plot point can be visually conveyed, you can just zoom in the camera and be like, this is the plot point. This is the plot point, don't forget it. On stage, people are right at the back. You can't rely on them seeing something. It has to be in the text. And then the more dense and complex your plot point is, the more you may have to repeat that plot point to make sure that no one's missed it, so that when that plot point pays off, they're like, oh my God, that was that thing, and not, where did that come from? So yeah, and then again, that itself takes time, and then you'd have the added time of the fact that if it's a musical, the songs are going to add more time. So if you do have a lot of plot points or a lot of dense and complex plot points, I would away from musical being the best medium to use. The flip side of this is that if you have a story with very few plot points and the plot points are kind of very simple and clear, that could be a good candidate if you're like, maybe I do want to make this a musical. Maybe as a play, this is a really tight one act, like 1 hour or an hour and 30, but I kind of want to make it a 2-act thing. So a musical would allow you to expand the runtime without stuffing in extra plot points that may not be needed, or kind of trying to overstuff and overbloat your text to try and extend the runtime, and then it just feels bloated. And then the last question that I would ask myself is, does the story that I want to tell have an emotional scale that suits the medium of a musical? I think I've mentioned this in videos before, but the logic behind the convention of musicals of, you know, having song and then also having dance is that it shows a heightening and a building of the character's emotion that they're trying to convey. An example of this is the song Electricity from Billy Elliot the Musical. In the scene in which that song takes place, Billy is auditioning for this ballet school. I'm assuming it's the Royal Ballet. I actually haven't seen Billy Elliot since I was a teenager. And the panel asks Billy, what does it feel like when you're dancing? And he goes into the song Electricity, which makes sense because dancing is everything for Billy, right? It's such a important emotional part of his life, so he sings it. And then midway through the song, singing is not enough for him to express his feelings and emotions, and so he starts to dance. Obviously, he is also a dancer, so yeah, it makes sense. Like, kind of, if your musical's about a ballet dancer, then yes, he should dance in his big solo song, like right at the end of the show. But also narratively it makes sense. Like, he's asked how it feels, he has to sing it because it feels so big, and then that feeling grows and grows and grows until he's not singing anymore, he's dancing. Obviously with musicals there are songs and things throughout, so if you've got a story where the characters reach the kinds of emotional heights that justify moving from speech into song, and that's kind of throughout the show, then yeah, again, that could be an indicator that if you're interested in writing a musical, it might work as a medium. If, however, your story is more of a slow burn and the emotional climax kind of coincides with the plot climax, so it's like bubble, 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 and then it's like, whoa, and it's only kind of that point that would justify that transition from speech into song, and the rest of it is kind of feeling a bit more mundane, or, you know, more gradual, too gradual to be like, and I'm singing now, then maybe your story is less suited to being a musical. But all this to say that this is all subjective and you can do what you want. By no means are the answers to these questions like the gospel truth or like the doctrine of like, these are the only situations in which a musical would be right. And also there could be a mix of different answers to those. And also in the writing process, your plots and characters might develop and change, and then you might be like, you know, actually I do want to have kind of a bit more of emotional peaks and troughs throughout the piece, or actually maybe I am changing the setting of this now, and there's a genre of music that's actually really evocative for where the new setting is, so like maybe that would work. Like, you know, the creative process is fluid, and so you might start off being like, yeah, I definitely want to try and make this a musical, and then over the writing process that changes, and vice versa. So, and then also, I guess a final question that I'll add is, do you really want to write a musical? If you really want to write a musical and you also really want to write the story that you're writing, then write it as a musical, and then you'll figure out at some point whether that works or not. Because if you start to not feel excited about your concept, that will be an indicator that something needs to change, and then you can change it because you're writing it, right? Let's do the outro because the sun has basically set. I thought this was going to be a short video. So that was my answer to the question, should your story be a musical? Let me know if you are actually writing a story, whether it's a musical, a play, or whatever it is. I'd just be interested to know what you're working on. And if you're not writing anything, but you were just here for the laughs, for the fun times, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Would love to have you on the channel. Come on down. My mental health is better, so I'm hoping to like film a little bit more regularly. Still, I'm not gonna commit to a full-on schedule or anything because life is very changeable, but yeah, I'm enjoying being back in front of the camera and things. So yeah, hopefully you'll see a bit more of me, and that will be fun. Stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye friends!